I was born in Yugoslavia at the time. Um, Now it doesn't, which doesn't exist anymore, but the name is Serbia. My parents' name are Josef Oswald and Katarina Oswald. I have a younger sister. She was born in January 9th, 1943. And my brother, he's the oldest. He was born in February 16th, 1932. And I was born in August 28th, 1941. So I'm the middle one. Word got out that the communists wanted to just, Tito was the president, or whatever his title was, wanted to get rid of all the Schwabians, the Donau Schwabians. That was the name of our German heritage. And so my dad was had to leave. First he was in the army and recruited, and then he found out that things didn't look too good, and he got word through word of mouth, because that was the only way of communicating in those days. Word to my mom, and he said, just pack what you need for the kids, and with the neighbors, they were all ready to leave, and my mom joined the caravan of wagons. Just leave, go towards Austria or Hungary, and until this whole turmoil is over, and their thought was to come back to their home, which never happened. I have some notes that my mom made at the time, and unfortunately she writes in the old German script, and it's very difficult to read. I could not make out just the dates, pretty much, from what my dad was very good in keeping kind of a diary, more or less, and from that I could, I remember, I read it, but I myself don't remember it. I couldn't tell you exactly all the stops that we made, but we landed in Germany, and then they relocated us. They had like the American zone, the English zone, and the European zone. And we luckily ended in the American zone. I remember that in Germany, my dad brought home he got lunch at work, and he always brought home the bread, which was just plain white toast bread, but to us it was like the best cake in the world, And so we managed somehow. Well, the war ended in 1945, and he kept working. And in the meantime, my first cousins, Marianne and John, they joined us because they lost their parents during the war, and then they were with us in Germany for a while, but they made it through other relatives to immigrate to the United States before we could. I started school in Germany, and I was at the age of 7. That's in 1948. That's when we left. Dad wanted to leave Europe because there was lack of work. I mean, the job that he had evidently paid minimum, what we would call minimum wage right now. And he was afraid there was still instability, that maybe something else might break out and not have total peace. So we had relatives here in the United States. He had an uncle, an aunt, and cousins. But the waiting quota was over 2 years, and so he didn't want to wait that long, and that's the reason why he approached a family that we had in Argentina, South America. It was my mom's cousin. Yes, he paid for the voyage for us to take a boat. He paid for the passage for us to go to Argentina. And that was we arrived in December 1948. That I remember very distinctly because it was in December, it's summer there. And we came, from winter. And it was raining, pouring rain. So they took us in and we stayed with one of the cousins in their house until we were able to, when my dad got right away a job, and my brother had to go and work because he was 16 at the time. So he had to work, and then he went to night school, and we started school in a private school, which my dad was very much criticized because he did not like the education. The public education was really not the best in those days in Buenos Aires. So he sent us to a all-girls Catholic school. He worked about 2.5 jobs. My mom did, she didn't have a job, but she did laundry for people, But at the time when we started school, we didn't speak any Spanish at all. So, and we were so worried, I told my mom, I said, well, what if we have to go to the bathroom? In your child's mind, that was important, And she said, don't worry, the nuns, they know your situation, and you're going to learn the language very quickly. And if you have to go to the bathroom, you just raise your hand, and she will be able to tell, And believe it or not, I can remember how exactly we learned. After the first year in school, we were able to communicate and understand the kids. And then it got to the point where my parents said, well, you have to speak German so we understand what you're saying, because my sister and I were speaking Spanish, So it's amazing how young children can absorb a language. And so when we, were in the elementary school, through eighth grade or 7th grade in Argentina. Well, while I was going to school, I worked for a seamstress, high-end seamstress, she called herself. She was very good, actually. And then my first job was in a textile. They did knitting sweaters and stuff like that, and I did all the handwork. It was all. Had very good clients downtown in Buenos Aires and at the big stores, and they had one girl he did the cutting of the different sizes, and one girl was putting them together, and then you had to finish everything by hand, and that was my job. And actually, I'm legally, a seamstress. I learned all the tricks of the trade. And for me, it was a wonderful time because, you make friends, and, and that's really, if you think about, 7 to 20, those are the years that you have, I have lifetime friends. My very best friend from Argentina, we're still in contact. And and we liked it. We did not want to leave the country, My dad said, no, the instability it's not a stable country to be with, and in the United States you're going to have a better future and so on. Again, there was a waiting period. So first, my brother is the one that came to the United States. My uncle sponsored him. And he was here about 6 months, and then he was drafted into the army. And he was able to sponsor my parents, but not his siblings. They told us, if you go and visit the United States, you might be able to to extend your visa and stay there, and then apply to be a resident. Well, my sister and I came. That was before my parents came in 1960, and stayed with my brother. And then obviously we couldn't stay. After a year our visa expired and we had to return. But what was really interesting at the time, we took English in Argentina and everything else, the Oxford English. And when we arrived in Miami, and we were supposed to take a plane, connection flight to Chicago. And my brother had written to us instructions as to call him and how to go about it, and then so that he could meet us at the airport. Well, we arrived in Miami, and the two of us said, well, I don't know, this is not the English that we learned in school. We could read on the signs, but the American and the English, it was sounded so different than the English we learned, we didn't understand the word. So we took the connection flight that we had to Chicago. We arrived in Chicago, and there was no one there waiting for us. So what to do next? So we couldn't try to use the phone didn't work. So we decided we had the address where he lived, so we decided we'd take a taxi and go to the house. What else do you do, And which we did. And we were kind of, we showed the driver the address, and he talked to us, we didn't understand. And we were kind of, should we or shouldn't we go? But he took us, and he was driving, and I thought, we were just telling each other that we hope that he doesn't take us someplace where we're not supposed to be. But he took us to the right address and everything. So we get to the house, the right number and everything. And like the old Chicago homes, you go in, and there is just like a little entry with the mailboxes, but the door to the apartments is locked, So we got in, opened the door, right there in the little foyer, and we rang the doorbell. No one was answering the doorbell. So what happened is there was a change in the scheduled flight, and so we came to his house, and he went in the meantime to the airport. So we missed each other. To make a long story short, after I don't know, it was a long while. They came, and we met finally, and that was when we came alone. Now the second time it was fine. Everyone was there, and it worked out well. But my brother at the time had bought a 2-flat in Chicago, and that's where we stayed the whole year until we came back. And when we went back the second time as U.S. residents, we lived with him for a while, and then after 2 years, they bought the next door house, which was a 3-flat, and then of course we moved in there, But another thing that's a little different from today's youth, we worked. Our paycheck went to my parents, and they gave us a little spending money, but that's how we were able to save to put a down payment in the house. I worked then in an office, and we were very lucky to get that job. Actually, both of us were hired. It was an import company, and so the owner was, he just took on to us. My mother was actually cleaning the house for him and his family, and then he heard about us girls coming to the States and all that, and then he said, well, are they proficient in English? Can they read and write? And my mom said, yeah. So he hired us, and I worked there until I got married, and until your mom was born. It was Chic X-Ray and company, and we were the solo importers of the first Ingram respirators at the time, and he did extremely well, So I had a lot of good experience in that company. And they usually in those days they didn't want you to work when you were pregnant after 6 months, but they said, just come even if you come 2 or 3 days. They didn't want to. They wanted me to keep on working as long as I could, which I did. And but the owner, he was very good to all the employees. We got very nice bonuses at the end of the year because the company made such a big profit. So that was very good. I met Opa when we first came. They had German dances in German clubs and so on. And I met the Opa in a Schwabenstube on Southport in Chicago. It was a regular dance of Friday evening, and so he was limping at the time, but he was at the dance, and I thought, I don't know, he asked me to dance, I danced with him, and I thought, gee, I don't know, this guy is limping, I don't know what. So he he invited me to go to the movies, which I found out later that he hated movies, but he invited me to the movies. It was kind of funny. So we got engaged after a year, and we got married after 2 years after meeting him. I was 24, he was 35. And the funny part is, he never looked his age, and I never asked. So when we went out to get the permits, for the marriage license and all that, that's when I found out how old he was. And I was really shocked, But not that it mattered at the time, but it was really a surprise to me. And so we did get married, Well, we had a little problem because I was Catholic and Opa was Lutheran. And the Catholic Church in South America was a lot more stricter than here in the United States, Like we went to church, we had the head covered, little things like that. And then I found out that he was not willing to change to the Catholic faith. And so it went a little bit back and forth because his Opa's parents were very, very religious, especially his mom. And so there was a problem. So my mom, using the common sense that she always did, she says, Berta, it's the same God. Your beliefs will not change. You believe in what you believe. And so you go to another church. It's up to you, but I don't think that it will be a big problem. The only thing she said, you have to decide, choose one religion to bring up the kids that way. Don't switch them from one to the other, or one child Catholic and one child Lutheran. That never works usually. And I said, and that's what I did. And we became members to at St. Luke, where we got married, and that was Missouri Synod, and they're the strictest Lutherans from all the synods, and that was very similar to what I was used to, except that the priests got married and that Rome was not part of it, but I felt comfortable doing it. So that's when we got married. And it was a normal wedding in the church. And then, of course, we had the banquet in a German hall, German food. My mom with her cousins and everything else. They baked for days and days. They had all home-baked goods, for desserts. And it was fun. Well, we had, my parents had the 3-flat, and they gave us the second floor. Well, my parents had the first floor. They rented the third and the basement. But yeah, we were on the second floor, and that's where we, started out together. After your mom was born, I actually stayed home. We bought an apartment building, and which was a big mistake because it was a bad area in Chicago, but they had the program what's called urban renewal, and we got a loan from the city to upgrade they wanted to bring up the neighborhood. It's what it's called now, the uptown neighborhood. And it was very run down, and we went through a lot of hardships, getting it to the point where it was ready to rent. And I ran all that. I mean, I didn't work per se for a company. I did all the paperwork. Also, at the time, we had problems with the illegal immigration, illegals that came and one rented the apartment, and then you ended up, maybe 10 in a studio apartment, And when they left, it was a disaster. So I took care of all the getting it ready again to rent and so on. It was a lot of work. And then my in-laws were in the picture, and they thought the same thing. Oh, well, they live in the same house. They see each other, every day, and which we didn't. My mom helped me out a lot babysitting when I went to the apartment building to do what I needed to do, but we did. Dad was very much influenced by his parents, so we had to go pretty much every weekend to see his parents, which they lived an hour away. They lived on the south side, we lived on the north side of Chicago. And so that's how it was. All the holidays, I mean, sure, we saw them, dropped off the kids, picked up the kids, and that was it. But we did, like for the holidays, birthdays and so on. Birthdays, I tried to put my foot down, and we had that with my family. But the holidays, it was always, they expected us, the Sturmers expected us to always be with them, because they felt, well, they live in the same house, they don't have to, we want them to be here. So, and most of the time we did, until later on I put my foot down, and it was not very well received, but that's the way it was. Both kids were born in Chicago, and we were in the apartment, and then our biggest, and then they went to St. Luke, to the same church where we got married. They started school, and Ingrid was in 3rd grade, and Walter he did the kindergarten, and he was going to start 1st grade when we moved to Morton Grove. That's a north suburb of Chicago. Morton Grove is the second suburb from Chicago. Like it's Chicago, then it's Skokie and Morton Grove. So it's about driving maybe not even half an hour. And everyone to this day, some of my relatives, they say, oh, we miss your picnics. Every summer I had everyone, my cousins and their kids, and my brother and his family and everyone. We had one big picnic in the backyard at my house. And for the holidays, usually I had Christmas, and for Thanksgiving we took turns, because I still had to my in-laws, So usually we went for Thanksgiving to their house, and Christmas I had at my house. So it was nice. The families were together for the holidays all the time. I enjoyed their school years tremendously, because both were in sports. So especially Uncle Walter, he was in all the sports that the school offered, because they went to a small Lutheran school, and he was pretty good. So, and what I enjoy is then we had this out of town meets, pretty far away, so we stayed overnight where the kids were staying with host parents, and we stayed in a hotel, I enjoyed that very much. In summer, we couldn't afford to go for really far away trips, but we went to the Wisconsin Dells in Wisconsin, which was fun for the kids. I think they, if you were to ask them, they probably remember that. So, but basically it was a very simple life, very simple, because don't forget, Opa worked full-time in summer. That was the busy time for him. So he couldn't take much time off at all to go on vacations. And when there was no work, he was home in winter, but the kids were in school. So basically that's what it was. It's really strange when Walter, well, he was always had all his friends in the house, very lively. The way he's now, he was always had something going. When he went away to college, the house was absolutely, the first year I had a hard time not having anyone in the house. I didn't feel it as much when your mom left, because she was more on the quiet side, But when he left, it was just, it took me a long time to kind of get used to it, But, you get used to it, and then when he came home a couple of times and the house was upside down, and when he left, oh, well, that wasn't so bad, having the house to ourselves, So, no, you miss them. It's just, it's just a different life altogether, because they're not under your wing anymore, And as a parent, I think it takes some getting used to it. I always believed in letting them spread their wings and do their own thing. That's how you learn. You make your mistakes and you learn and you become independent. But it's I think as a parent it was a hard time for me. When Mitchell was born in the year 2000, that's when we decided to move. And then we said, well, we want to get close to one of the kids. So I was still working full time so that I don't have to take that much time off, to travel back and forth. But yeah, I worked part-time through an agency. I found jobs through an agency, and then I found a full-time job for CarQuest. That's where I worked until I retired. So I found all different things, to do, get involved in, and keep a busy life, and I enjoy my home. I like gardening. I love reading, So it kept me busy, keeping the house clean, the outside nice, my flowers. I enjoyed very much at the old house. Needless to say, the grandkids, and the little know about their lives, but I want to be part of them, and for them to know how much we care about them, that's important to me, because I didn't have the luxury of knowing my grandparents. So, it's just mainly family. Families was always the center of my life, Strangely, after I retired, I was very lucky to make a trip to Argentina. And I was extremely lucky that my friends, they welcomed me with open arms. And what I saw then of the country that I lived there for so many years, but I had never a chance to see. I saw the northwest part of Argentina, which is absolutely breathtaking. When I was 15, I took life too serious. I was always, you had to do this and you had to do that and you had to. I think I would advise, enjoy life, be a little bit more on the light side, because life gets hard as it is when you get older, But I think that would be that comes to mind, just take life and enjoy it and be more on the light side, Don't always worry about money, and don't worry about a job, and don't worry about, what you have or what you don't have. The most important thing for me is family. And the second important thing is to have a career or profession, something that you enjoy, because it's very important, and not because you have to do it, that you enjoy doing, but family is the most important thing, because that's one thing you cannot change. You have to take family with the good and the bad that comes along with it, and enjoy it, and I think that's about it.